Hi, Lily.
Hi, Anna.
Lily, why did Shakespeare constantly tell his actors to break a leg?
I don't know, Anna. Why did Shakespeare constantly tell his actors to break a leg?
Because every play has a cast.
Ha ha! Ba-dum.
Hi, I'm Anna.
And I'm Lily.
And this is LiliAnna's Preread Mediathek,
the podcast where we analyse and discuss audience preconceptions of media from a queer feminist lens. Yeah!
Yay! And we always start and end with a dad joke, so please send yours to us, and that's, don't be, as if you're confused, that's why.
Cool. So welcome. This is part 2 of our episode on Much Ado About Nothing. We've looked at 4 adaptations so far. These are the 1993 film directed by Kenneth Branagh, the 2005 TV special, I guess, directed by Brian Percival and written by David Nichols, the 2019 play directed by Kenny Leon, and the 2023 film Anyone But You, directed by Will Gluck. So last episode we talked about the context that these adaptations were made in and how these contexts affected the interpretations that these adaptations had of the text. And we also looked at what elements make up the modern rom-com, and also why Anyone But You kind of fails to incorporate these in a meaningful way.
And also fails as an adaptation.
Yeah. That too. There'll be more on that this episode as well.
Yes.
So in this episode we'll be focusing on what key elements make a story Much Ado About Nothing and not just an enemies to lovers story. We'll be looking at the patriarchal storyline in Much Ado About Nothing and its importance to the plot and impact of Much Ado About Nothing and how different adaptations tackle this, including in the use of the song Sigh No More in the 1993 version. Yeah, and just the bizarre use of that. And then we'll be looking at different possibilities within casting choices in Much Ado About Nothing and analysing the more successful and less successful casting choices in the adaptations that we're looking at.
We're going to be starting with Much Ado and the problem of patriarchy.
Yes. So last episode we established what elements are needed for a rom-com to work. Anna, have you got any quick examples?
You need to be motivated as a viewer that you want these people to get together. The setting needs to make sense in the story, in the plot. You need to be interested in the surroundings, also the friend groups. It's really helpful to have a really serious storyline in there to sort of ground it. Obviously, because it's a rom-com, you need slapstick moments that actually work and are not just annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Perfect. So that's some of the key elements that make up a rom-com. So now we're going to look at what key elements make this story Much Ado About Nothing. And like we said, not just an enemies to lovers story or some other kind of love story, rom-com story. And one of the key things, I think, when looking at Much Ado About Nothing and what makes it Much Ado is that it's not just about the banter between Beatrice and Benedict. Much Ado is a story about who you are loyal to and rebelling against a strict hierarchy. So now I'm going to quote from a Tumblr post which we've had a really hard time finding the original author for. So this post is by Scribe Find Egil.
We have everything. Everything we quote. Always, you can find all of our sources in our details. We will post that. That's available. So I'm sorry if we mispronounced your username.
Yes, apologies. But this Tumblr user says that, quote, when adapting Much Ado About Nothing, quote, if you make it just about the banter, you're going to fail. It's about the respect, end quote. And it's about Benedict siding with Beatrice rather than the, quote, boys club he's been part of. Quote, both because he loves her and because she's right.
Correct.
And this is really vital in the play. When you're adapting or staging this production, it has to be about challenging patriarchy and hierarchy to do right by those you love, which is potentially one of the things that can be quite difficult to adapt because the patriarchy of Shakespeare's times in like the early modern period does not translate that well if you're doing a more modern adaptation.
Right.
Or there can be problems, and this can seem like quite a difficult problem with adaptation.
Because you still need to be able to root for different characters, even ones that are villainous.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll be looking at how to adapt a heavily and kind of context dependent, I guess, in that kind of early modern era patriarchal text, when that patriarchy is integral to the plot conflict and character development within the play.
Yeah.
So let's start by looking at...
For example,
this is the big one, really. The hero and Claudio plotline. So I think for at least some adaptations, or I guess just like modern stagings, this can be one of the most difficult things to adapt for a modern audience. So just to recap, this is the main plotline and conflict of the play, where hero is framed for sleeping with another man the night before her wedding, and is then publicly humiliated by Claudio on her wedding day, who accuses her of loss of virginity and of being a slut, basically. But then, kind of after some shenanigans, and Claudio realising that actually she's innocent and all is well, they get happily married, and that's sort of the happy ending of the play. So this plot line, as it stands in the original text, relies quite heavily on a society that is strictly hierarchical, with kind of a key component of this being suitable marriages between wealthy parties, and where women's virginity is integral to their value in this marriage market. And there's also other plot points that also revolve around patriarchy as well.
So because this is the whole thing about her having allegedly cheated, you then have Borachio. If he doesn't brag to Conrad about sleeping with Margaret, the chambermaid, then... and tricking the prince and Claudio, then the watch cannot overhear that.
Yes.
That also then is how the plot continues, because then they don't find out, and then hero's name is never cleared.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to make a movie adaptation about cheating or about someone not really being a virgin, which again to us seems ridiculous, but in this context it matters. Well, how do you deal with those plot lines then? Because the whole story then doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. If you take the text at face value and that the end of it is a happy ending and these two people get together, it's a comedy, it's a romance, the happy ending only really works if the audience believes that Claudio should be forgiven by Hero and that they should end up together, and that it's not just a horrible miscarriage of justice that they end up together at the end of the play.
And that he's an ass-faced piece of shit.
Yeah. So now let's look at how these apply within the adaptations we're looking at. So the 1993 version and the 2019 play follow the kind of original text, and they might make occasional cuts, but they follow that original play text. So as we talked a bit about in part one, the 1993 version has this quote-unquote timeless, archaic setting. You have the loose flowy shirts with the leather trousers that kind of suggest a sort of like mishmash of time periods. And you also have this archaic image of like Don Pedro and his men entering on horseback with their swords raised in the air. So you have this sort of out-of-time kind of setting that this play is set in. And so
that is an amazing shot, though.
Yeah, it's such a great shot. And by doing this, it implies that the setting is designed for the text, I'd argue. So they've created this context and this setting where the elements of the play could be viewed as truthful. If that makes any sense. I'd argue that while the audience still feel bad for Hero and don't necessarily empathise with Claudio when watching this version, it feels like maybe slightly more acceptable because the setting is designed so that these events could take place here, wherever here is.
I do think it's truthful because it feels archaic in the sense that then the text, it never takes you out of it. You never have a moment in watching this movie where you're like, wait, where is this and when is this?
Yeah. And another thing that the 1993 version does is that we see the tricking scene where Claudio and the prince see Borachio seducing Margaret and pretending that it's Hero, which you don't see in some of the other versions because it's not actually in the original text. But by granting us this view, the film arguably plants more sympathy with the men because we see it as they would have seen it. We see why they would be deceived, and it presents them more as victims of Don Jon and Borachio than as kind of the perpetrators of violence themselves.
Yeah, but it also plays again with the line of you saw what you wanted to see, which you've got in the 2005 one.
Yeah.
Because again, like you said, they're all wearing flowery shirts.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like Don Jon has just tried to pretend that the prince has tried to seduce Hero for himself, and he's just like, and they've just overthrown a rebellion by this guy. Why are you trusting this man? Anyway, so that's 1993. And then the 2019 version, which again uses the original play script, has a modern setting with contemporary values. It's set in 2020, where the conflict that surrounds the play and the central plot, where the men arrive from war and then go back off to war at the end, is a campaign around racial justice in the context of the 2020 election. And in this context, arguably, it's even harder to justify the treatment of Hero. So the director, Kenny Leon, and the actress who plays Hero, Margaret Odette, tried to give her some agency within the play by adding actions not in the original play script. So, for example, during the wedding scene where Claudio accuses Hero of infidelity, she tries to physically charge at Claudio and has to be held back by the other characters.
And you really need that. I don't think I ever knew that I really needed to see that before I saw it being adapted that way. But in that moment, you're like, yes, someone get at him. How dare he?
Yeah, it's like you actually see her react to what's being done to her and being like, this isn't okay, like, this is awful.
I didn't do anything.
Yeah. And then you see her like also like reaching for her father as well, which is really heartbreaking. And it's her being like, you need to trust me, you need to believe what I'm saying, and I need your care and support. And then he turns away from her, and it's like awful. Again, it's like portraying how awful this scene is for Hero.
Yeah.
And that's really, really good. And I think those elements really, really work. But another thing they add to it, another action they add that isn't in the original play script, is when Hero and Claudio are reconciled at the end, she slaps Claudio before kissing him, and then they get married. In the recording that you can watch for free online, you can hear that the audience applauds at this moment, which I think does make sense. I was like, cool, nice.
In the room.
Yeah, the audience applauds. And I think it is a moment of kind of trying to have a sense of justice in this ultimately unjust and unsatisfying for that reason text, as well as with the other actions fleshing Hero out from being just a kind of passive heroine. But like, particularly the slap just doesn't quite sit right with me, because I think it just, like, a slap does not have the same impact as publicly shaming someone into a social death, and it will not stop Claudio from doing something similar again. It doesn't redress the power imbalance between the two characters, and it just ultimately doesn't make it just. But at the end of the day, they are working within this play script. They can't change what is written in the play, so they do the best they can with what they have, I think.
Yeah, and because of this, in this adaptation, Claudio remains a prick.
Yep. I mean, I guess what they could have done is just like lent into the horror, I don't know, I guess maybe horror of it, and made it so that it felt really, I don't know, it felt worse that they were getting back together. But it's trying to be this version's trying to be joyful, so I guess.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And how do the other adaptations that we looked at deal with this?
So in the 2005 and 2023 adaptations, they don't just use the original play text. Because
they have the freedom to change stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They have the freedom to change the dialogue and the plot, and they do this to greater and lesser success. So, once again, back to 2023's Anyone But You. This, as we've talked about, is not the best, the most faithful or the most I guess just like good adaptation of Much Ado About Nothing. They do keep the hedges in the gulling scene, which is when they trick Beatrice and Benedict into believing that the other is in love with them, and I think that works reasonably well. But everything else they change, so it chooses to avoid the problem of the Hero Claudio plotline by just scrapping that conflict altogether. So the Hero and Claudio counterparts, Hallie and Claudia, are just happily in love, and apart from one moment where they trick Beatrice and Benedict and the audience into thinking they might call off the wedding because they're just too stressed out by Beatrice and Ben, or B and Ben in this version's antics, there's ultimately no conflict in their relationship, not really.
It's what the Tumblr post said, you only have the banter.
Yes, exactly. If only Will Gluck had read this Tumblr post before trying to create this film. But yeah, no one is publicly shamed. No one fakes their death. And there's just no moment where the relationship is in peril. Like you mentioned before, Anna, a rom-com needs to have some serious element, or arguably needs some serious element to make the fluffy stuff feel better by there needs to be some sort of stakes to it. And there's just no stakes at all. And all of the narrative focus is instead shifted to B and Ben's relationship. And yeah, as we've talked about, they immediately see through the scheme to trick them into love, and instead adopt a fake dating trope just to mess with their families and potential lovers. So yeah, they change the plot so much that not only is it unrecognisable as Much Ado, except for there's all these random kind of Shakespeare quotes throughout it that are reminding you that this is technically an adaptation, but it also loses all the stakes of the original. And as we discussed in the last part of this episode, it does not replace these with any rom-com elements that make it particularly engaging or make you particularly invested in it. It's just a bit meh.
Yeah. And now let's get to an adaptation that we both really enjoyed, and we enjoy more the more we think about it.
So, yeah, turning to the 2005 version, this is a much more interesting and, we would say, successful adaptation in how it chooses to adapt and change the hero Claudio plot. I think this version understands that this is the main conflict, and it's necessary for Beatrice and Benedict's relationship to carry any weight. So, in this version, we transpose the hierarchy of kings and nobles' illegitimate children into an early noughties workplace drama. In this context, Don Jon, who is now Don, is no longer the villain because he's the prince's illegitimate brother and has no place in society, as in the original. He is the villain because he is emasculated. There's various reasons for this. He's demoted from his job in a society that values men based on productivity under capitalism. He's also recently divorced in a society that values heterosexual marriage.
You're sacking Don. Leonard, his wife has just left him.
No, I won't sack him. Just offer him an inferior job and hope he resigns. Stick him on graphics or something. No one likes him. He's constantly fouling up. I swear to you, I spent 5 minutes with the man. I get heartburn.
You wanted to see me, Leonard?
And he has obsessive feelings for Hero that are not reciprocated. And he takes all of this out on Hero as the woman he says he loves and would like to own.
Yeah. This is the only adaptation that looks at like how to change Don Jon's motivations. Yeah. And in 2019 and the 1993 one, Don Jon acts more like a sulky teenager.
Yes.
And you do get in 1993, you get the possible homoerotic subtext because he does talk about, in the play, he talks a lot about how, you know, he's not one of them, he's different from them. And in that scene, he also has a shirt off, so.
Shirt off being massaged with oil by Conrad.
Yeah, and in Anyone But You, that he doesn't exist because they didn't want to deal with his character.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that was what the ex-fiancé was meant to be, but I don't know why that guy's there.
Oh, okay, is he called Jonathan? He's called Jonathan, isn't he?
I think so. I don't remember. Crap, now I have to look this up for a second.
Oh my god, I hadn't realised that until this moment. Oh no.
Do you know what I noticed today? In the last 24 hours? The director guy for the TV station that comes along with Benedict, that's meant to be Don Pedro. His name is Peter. Yeah. I did not pick up on that. Yeah, his name is Jonathan.
Oh my god. Okay, so he does exist, but in
no, he doesn't.
Unrecognisable form. No, he doesn't. He doesn't exist in 20.
It's like everything else. We're just constantly yelling at this adaptation, being like, "You're not an adaptation." That's why I mean he doesn't exist.
Oh, but I guess he's sort of like, because he's, I don't know. Anyway, he's part of the family, but not part of the family. But then he also doesn't have anything to do.
Oh my god, you're right.
What? maybe actually the 2023 version is really good and has really thought about how it adapts its characters. Oh my god.
Just torn up that he's not part of our family anymore.
I mean, he works at our house every night from like 11 years old. So he was basically family. It was about to be actual family.
No. This is one of those video essays which is like, this is actually a good film, as it turns out. Yeah, but in the 2005 one, they changed his motivations and they update it from quote, just being evil, the way that Kenneth Branagh put it when he talked about the Don Jon character, and they changed him to a contemporary stalker.
Yes.
So they adapt him into something that we know and understand. And also, I think this is so good because it highlights the persistence of patriarchy through the ages, and also therefore reinforces the unfairness of Hero's position because she just keeps being nice and kind and sweet, and it still ends up being her downfall.
It's got to stop.
What has?
The letters, the phone calls, the flowers.
I can buy someone flowers, can I?
Not anymore, no. I'm very grateful, but I've seen you outside the house, Don. Sitting in your car in the middle of the night. It's not fair. I don't like it. It scares me.
I'm sorry.
You can't force someone to love you, Don. But you will find somebody else. I know you will. You're a lovely man.
Am I?
Of course you are. You're just lonely, that's all. You'll find someone else, like I found Claude, and you'll fall in love again, and then we can go back to being good friends.
Yeah, I think that's really cute, and we'll get into this a bit more in a bit, but this adaptation understands that patriarchy still exists, but just in an adapted form, and that it can still be really brutal and life-destroying.
Yeah, physically and socially. And the trope that you can ruin a woman's life and that the men around her just want to own her is an old trope, but it's still relevant. And I think this adaptation really, really understands that and knows how to adapt. Like you mentioned this at the beginning, like how do you bring the patriarchy from such an old ass text into the present? Misogyny and patriarchy, we still got those.
Yeah. Yeah, so they changed the plot around a bit. So rather than there being this mistaken identity of Braccio and Margaret, Don tricks Claude, this version's Claudio, into believing that Hero is secretly having a relationship with him while she's seeing Claude, including sending him photos, texts, and sleeping with him the night of their wedding. And I really didn't understand the text thing, because I was like, why can't she just see that someone's sending texts from her phone? But
this is an old phone, Lily. This is an old phone.
I didn't have a phone in 2005. I didn't realise. But phones back then didn't show your most, sent messages. You had to, go into the contact to see them. Is that right?
You could go into texts and then hit, an inbox, almost like when you write emails. So when you wrote someone a text, you wouldn't necessarily see it. It wasn't like a chat. I think the iPhone was the first one, because I remember the first girl in my class who had an iPhone. And I just remember looking at this and being like, because you used to have to constantly check the old text that someone sent you to be like, wait, did I answer that? Did you ask me something else? And then you would have to leave that text and then go into the writing of the text again. Yeah. Old times.
Old times.
Yeah.
Cool. So Ramona Ray, we'll leave links to her article below. She observes that this Much Ado Retold changes Hero's alleged crime. Quote, the plot is modified so as to construct promiscuity and infidelity rather than relinquishment of virginity as the alleged crime. So basically what she's saying is that Claude's not angry that Hero is spoiled goods per se, but he's angry because he thinks Hero is being unfaithful to him while they're together. Although he does also just call her rotten goods in the wedding scene when he's attacking her.
Yeah.
So it's still something that people think.
How about the fact that she's a lying, cheating, scheming, deceitful bitch?
What did you say?
You're here to give her away, Leonard, yes? Is that right?
Yes.
Well, I don't want her. She's rotten goods. Here, you can take it back.
But also, I guess by adapting it in this way, this is a sexist assumption that a 2005 audience would be more familiar with and understand.
Yeah. And this is so important because it shows that Don Jon is weaponizing patriarchy against Hero, but Claude is too.
Yes.
I think we noticed this the first time when we watched the 2019 adaptation, the Kenny Leon one. We were like, oh, he doesn't give a shit that she died at the wedding. He only gives a shit when he finds out that she didn't actually cheat on him. So Claude sucks. Claudio sucks.
And importantly, I think this adaptation very explicitly does not side with Claude.
Yes.
In 2005 version, it shows much more of Hero's character, specifically around how she deals with Don's advances. Like you said, Hero does basically absolutely everything right. She's as nice as she possibly can be, but it isn't enough. Or it's too much as well.
Yeah.
And because she does end up sleeping with him, and that's really crucial as well, is that Hero does sleep with Don, unlike in the original where no sex occurs. Sex does occur in this version. And Ray argues that Claude's question of Hero, have you slept with Don at the wedding?
At the wedding. In front of
her dad and all of her friends and her co-workers. This question is unfair because it does not allow for context. It was before they were together and because Hero felt sorry for Don. But to be honest, to me, that also doesn't really feel like the point. Claude's question feels deeply unfair because it shouldn't matter. Hero sleeps with Don because she pities him and thinks it is the right thing to do. However, the meaning behind the sex is taken away from her. When Don learns that she slept with him out of pity, it becomes an emasculating act he must seek revenge for. When Claude learns that Hero slept with Don and then announces it in front of the wedding guests, it becomes a shameful act that she must be punished for. And like I said, unlike the original, the sex does occur. However, to the sympathetic audience, it is nothing. It should not matter. And it is the male characters attaching their own egos to it that creates the much ado that sees Hero shamed, attacked, and eventually admitted to hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Ray talks about this as well, that Claude is positioned as being possessive and much more like Don than as a good man. Certainly not one you should marry. And the ending in the emergency room, that was always going to be, because this was always going to end in a very aggressive physical danger situation for Hero. Yeah, because stalking, oftentimes when we talk about femicides and stuff, stalking is often referred to as murder in slow motion. And none of these men step in until she's been seriously injured. They just stand there, they don't interfere. And the scene starts with her entering the room being like, wasn't I nice to you?
Affectionate, a good friend, didn't I listen to you talk on and on into the night? And wasn't I honest?
Yeah.
Like, that's how she talks to him, and then she ends up in the hospital.
Yeah. And also, as a parallel to the 2019 Much Ado About Nothing, in this version, Hero slaps Don as well after he admits that he wanted to humiliate her out of revenge. And after she slaps him, he then ends up putting her in the hospital by attacking her right back. And I think that rewatching this, I was like, oh yeah, that's the reason why the slap in the 2019 version doesn't feel like justice, because it's like, doesn't do anything. This version, the 2005 version, just highlights the unequal power dynamic, that she just ends up worse off every time. Even when she tries to defend herself, she ends up worse off.
Also, the 2019 slap is like a very feminized, I don't know, it just reminds me of the old movies where they did this in the 2000s as well. A woman slaps a man and then he still kisses her and goes like, ooh la la, or something. And the 2005 one, she slaps at him. She just isn't someone who knows how to punch someone in the face. You can just see her absolute fury in her face. It's not pretty and it's not a statement. It's just...
It's just... emotion that she has to get out. And yeah.
Yeah, and it puts her as a character in the 2005 setting, but she still ends up being wronged and hurt. And because these issues, again, patriarchy, misogyny, they haven't gone away, they just look a bit different now. Yeah.
So, like, compared to the original version where Hero is like quite a silent character, in the 2005 version, they give her this epilogue at the end where she actually finally gets to say her piece. And it feels like a real balm to the source material. And as Ray states, quote, crucially, there is no forgiveness here, only the recognition of a recurring scenario of unwanted paternalism, end quote. So yeah, Hero's speech where Claude's like, oh, I'm gonna move away, I don't know, how do you feel about that? And she's like, I think you should move away. And then she's like... In this scene, she doesn't just reject Claude, but also all of the patriarchal structures that would support Claude in condemning her or trying to control her. She's like, I need to get away from this paternalism, and I need to get away from this, and I just need to take some time for me and think things through. And I think that's really powerful as well, that it's not just condemning Claude or Don. I think this version recognises the wider structures at play in this scene, and it just feels, like a great addition. And... Yeah,
it's about her talking about the possession of this kind of love and just going like, no, all these dudes are complicit and I don't want to have anything to do with any of you, actually. God, I hated him so much, even in the last scene, because he's like, I got a job in London, and she's like, you should go. And he goes like, can I have some hope in the future?
It's a big step. Moving away.
I think you should go.
Say I can hope, Hero, please. Please.
If you give a fuck about this woman, as a person, not as the person you get to marry or whatever, put some freaking work in that you care about this person as a human being.
Yeah.
And don't just go like, hey, I might be out of reach for you in the future. Don't you want to grab me now? Like, oh, fuck him.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also the fact that he's like, oh, can I have some hope? That also feels slightly dangerous because, like...
She doesn't owe you that.
She doesn't owe you that. And also, the reason that Don's obsession with Hero kicked up a gear and became more aggressive, that was when she announced her engagement to Claude.
Yeah.
And that's when he was like, oh, I don't have any hope with her now. She's possessed by another man, so my only, solace now is to get revenge. And actually, I don't think Claude should have any hope. Like, cut that hope out now, because otherwise, if you get your hopes up and then you lose them again, it could just lead to the same spiral of things, which is exactly what happened with Claude as well. The reason that he became aggressive with Hero was that he thought he'd lost possession of her to Don. And there's a great quote from the wedding scene where Hero says, "I thought you loved me, Claude, but if you loved me, you wouldn't do this to me."
Yes.
Because it's not about love, it's about possession.
And at the wedding, he is ready to humiliate her in public.
Yeah.
You're so beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Don't be daft. Oh. Claude, you're shaking.
Dear friends.
And then, like, the ceremony starts, and then he brings it up when the pastor says, "Does anyone have any objections?" He was willing to make this public and to, like, make sure that, again, the social humiliation that we talked about that is so integral to this plot point, he still does this. And the thing you talked about with love, too, there's a moment in the 2005 one where they talk about what kind of stories to feature, and Beatrice calls out Benedict's misogyny, and he goes like, "I don't hate women, I love women."
Yeah.
And she says, like, something akin to, like, "God save me from men who claim they love women."
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of Beatrice and Benedict.
Yes. Because in this version, the threat of patriarchy is real and acknowledged, it makes Benedict's siding with Beatrice powerful and meaningful. The key element of the original play that is reproduced here as well is that the whole point is that Benedict has to give up his loyalty to the men, and particularly to Claude and to this boys' club, as Ray puts it. So in this version, as we've spoken about, it's updated to a workplace setting, but there is still patriarchy in place.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, as Ray argues, again, initially Benedict is too douchey and sexist, whereas Beatrice is too spiky and feminist for a relationship to work. But she specifically highlights that Beatrice's behaviour is necessary for the workplace. And I think that's true. I think we see Beatrice's quote-unquote spikiness as justified because she has to defend herself, because she can't trust Benedict, or by extension most of the men in her workplace. It starts off, one of the first scenes that we see is her being groped by an older co-host while on air.
Quick word.
Sweetheart.
If you ever touch any part of my body with any part of your body, either on air or off, or even in your imagination, then I swear I'm gonna...
Yeah.
And then she's also stood up and dumped by text by Benedict, which is another end of kind of douchey spectrum. And then Leonard, who is the, I guess, producer of the local news show, is like, "I'm gonna rehire this co-host that she has some bad history with without telling her, because they have a good frisson and it will be good for ratings if we have a bit of flirtation on the TV."
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, oh, and he also doesn't comment on any of the workplace flirtations. He's just like, yep, because there's Margaret and Benedict's flirtations, and I don't know, yeah, he's a bit of a crap boss, really.
Yeah, it's so bizarre because there's so many moments where he only criticizes it in terms of, like, manners. Even when the old co-host makes comments towards Beatrice, she threatens him with violence because he will not back down. And then Leonard comes in and is like, essentially, you cannot act this way at work. But not specifically...
Yeah, he's like, stick to the script.
Yeah.
And you're like, mate, that's not good enough. You're the one who's in power here. You've got to actually stand up for your female presenter. Like, what are you doing?
Even in regards to Don, he says to Beatrice he doesn't like the way that Don looks at his daughter. And then Beatrice says,
All the men look at Hero like that. That's why you employed her.
Well, I don't like it.
So,
yeah.
Like you said, Leonard exploits the sexism and the misogyny for his work, but he also doesn't like it when it's being done to his daughter.
Yeah. Again, possession.
Yes.
It's all about possession.
Pick a lane, dude.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have it both ways. It's always when men complain about sexism and then they're sexist because they're like, well, not my sister, not my daughter. And I'm like, why did you think this was going to stop at your daughter?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, and you can see this represented at the fancy dress party that they throw and what all the characters are dressed as. So Leonard comes dressed as a kind of Greek or Roman patriarch because he's the leader of the production studio. Claude comes dressed as like a chivalrous knight, obsessed with honour and virtue.
But it's a costume. Sorry.
And Don comes dressed as a sad clown / when I saw him, I was just like, oh my god, it's the Joker. Oh my god. I was like, that's so funny. And obviously the Joker didn't have the same edgelord associations as it does now, but I feel like that's aged well. That's kind of aged into like an even fuller meaning of what it would have done at the time.
Yes, it does.
It's really funny.
Yes, it has. That's so true.
But yeah, so Benedict also comes dressed as a knight, and this is because Claude has given him this costume, and I guess that's in some ways, that's just a throwback to the original play and them being brothers in arms. But it's also, I guess, like a representation of him being in the same sort of like in league with Claude in this moment, and he's wearing the same costume as Claude is. And so Benedict's arc is about him overcoming this patriarchal culture and distancing himself from the patriarchal order, like in the original. And I feel like that's a representation of that. So like he has to reject Claude and what he stands for, rather than standing in brotherhood with him.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is quite a clever way of doing that, having them both come dressed as the same thing.
Also, in regards to where does the patriarchy start and end if you side with it.
Yeah.
At the party, so Claude gives Benedict the costume and is like, you're going to be like me. And he also makes a reference to, I've been wearing this around the apartment all day, I feel so powerful, or something like that. At the party, then Benedict is not being inappropriate to Hero, but they're just talking. And you have this great shot of just in the middle, Claude approaching the two of them, just with the most angry expression on his face. And it's like, you know, he wanted to be the hero and the knight, and he wanted Benedict to join him. But he's like, no, that's my woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So possessive.
God, is that also why he proposed?
Yeah. Oh, because he was like, because he felt like big and strong.
Let me own this one, please.
Gross.
Sorry, but this is such a good adaptation.
It's really good. So in terms of Benedict having to reject this brotherhood with Claude and these possessive patriarchal values that Claude embodies and enacts.
Yeah.
I think it's really key that in the church scene, so this is just after the wedding scene, isn't it? Rather than, immediately after the wedding scene, when Claude humiliates Hero. So Beatrice says, quote, "If I were a man, I would eat his heart, except why would I want to be a man? You're all the same. All you brave, honourable men, you all just stand there." And so this is a paraphrase of the original text, where kind of Beatrice is saying, like, if only I were a man, I would challenge Claudio.
Eat his heart.
I would eat his heart in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But in this context, it's like she's wishing she were a man because it's not socially acceptable for a woman to duel a man to the death within the context of the early modern period. And that's why she has to ask Benedict to do that for her.
Right.
Whereas...
because it's not her place.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whereas in 2005, only a man can confront Claude because that's the only way to break down the patriarchal bonds that protect these men.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really clever way of adapting it. And I guess maybe that's an element of it in the original as well, but it's a really great way of adapting this thing where it's like, well, surely Beatrice could go along and have an argument with Claude. She could do that, but it's not going to make a difference unless this boys' club breaks itself apart and they stop protecting each other. Otherwise, it's not going to have any impact.
Also, they just watched everyone not listen to Hero.
Yeah.
So why the hell would they listen to Beatrice? It's not that she couldn't say the right thing. It's that not just Claude, but none of the men would listen to her. That doesn't matter.
Yes.
Hero can speak for herself. She doesn't need Beatrice. But in this structure, in this hierarchy, she would need a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
To speak for her and defend her honor or whatever.
And so Benedict's response is, quote, "I love you, Beatrice. I want to make this all right." End quote. He hears her and he acts.
But he also, 2 lines before this, says, "I bet he had good reasons," or something to that effect. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. I'm sure he had his reasons. Yeah. I know. And I guess he's having to overcome the easiness of wanting to believe that his friend is, like... He wants to believe that his friend is in the right because otherwise it's uncomfortable and it's difficult. And... I mean, ultimately, he doesn't do it just because it's right. He does, or I don't know, maybe he does do it because he does know it's right, ultimately, but he has to have that push from Beatrice to be like, you know that this is the right thing to do, and you know that Claude is in the wrong. And he has to have that love of Beatrice that pushes him to do that, even though he does know that Claude is ultimately in the wrong. It's kind of complicated. You're like, Benedict, could you have not just done this yourself? But
it is the thing that you talked about, the breaking of the brotherhood.
Yes.
Which he then also does.
Yeah, it is true. So he goes up to Claude and he says...
Claude, you know you've done something terrible, don't you?
Well, see, that, my friend, is a matter of opinion.
You're not my friend, and it's not a matter of opinion. He's tricked you, Claude. He's made you look a fool.
Yeah.
And so, like in the original, Benedict distances himself from Claude. He's like, you're not my friend. He's not going to be complicit with what Claude is saying. He's not going to forgive him or defend him. And he's not going to pander to his friendship and the loyalty of the brothers in arms. He's like, what you're saying isn't right. It's not a matter of opinion. You've done something terrible. And I'm not going to defend you.
He's breaking the bro code.
Yes, he's broken the bro code. Yeah, break that bro code, Benedict.
Sorry, we should put that on like a sign and wear it to the next like feminist protest we attend, and no one's gonna get it. Like, break the bro code, Benedict, and they're like,
what? Why have you misspelled Benedict? And with a slightly different perspective, I guess, Ray argues that, well, she thinks that Benedict grows into his knightly attire. So, like, when he defends Hero's virtue for Beatrice, which I think is a slightly interesting take. But I guess in this sense, maybe it's looking at what chivalry means. So looking at Claude's idea of what honour is versus what Benedict's idea of honour is. So for Claude, it's this patriarchal and sexist idea of honour that is linked to, arguably, what this idea of chivalry, what I would say the idea like chivalry is connected to. Whereas the other is more fair and feminist. So yeah, basically Benedict's just a really good ally. He's a feminist ally. He wears "This is what a feminist looks like" t-shirts. But yeah, he does genuinely show his love and respect for Beatrice and Hero, and he's willing to do what's right rather than what's easy, I would say.
With the price of getting the woman that he loves.
Yes.
I do think that that's important.
But I think being motivated by love. But I think his actions show that he's not just wanting to possess Beatrice, and I think that's interesting as well. He's like, true. I'm going to do this for you because I love you, but not expecting anything in return. Because later, when they're in the hospital after Hero's been knocked unconscious, Beatrice is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we were supposed to talk about something, weren't we? But I feel like this isn't the right time." And Benedict's like, "That's fine, let me just take you home. We don't need to do this right now. Obviously, you're really upset and it's not the time." He's not expecting stuff.
Also, he says something about, "We've got all the time in the world," I think.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, no, this is in for the long haul.
Yeah. To conclude, I guess Anyone But You tries to quote itself into existence as an adaptation, but this only highlights the vast gulf between the original text it quotes and the actual story it chooses to tell, which has lost all but the most surface level elements of the original. Much Ado Retold, by contrast, as Ray argues, quote, represents a paraphrase. It understands the original enough that it is not reliant on quoting it exactly to portray its essential qualities and be recognisable. However, the form that holds the qualities is changed, so that the pleasure of the adaptation is in the retelling of the known story into something fresh and interesting. As Sanders argues in Adaptation and Appropriation, quote, the ongoing experiences of pleasure for the reader or spectator is in tracing the intertextual relationships, end quote. It doesn't try to shy away from the core of the original text, but embraces it while including its modern-day differences. This is what makes it such a strong adaptation.
I think the 2005 one, every time I now have rewatched it, I just keep thinking that this text really cares about these characters as people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it works so well as an adaptation, because it looks at Hero as a person, and so many feminist adaptations do a very surface level girl boss. And the reason that Beatrice brings up feminism here is because it's important to lay out the misogyny of all these different men in this workplace in this systemic way, because it's about the way that she is represented as a presenter, how she represents stories as a news presenter, how the men work with each other in this work environment and also with her. But this is such a good example of how to put something in a completely different context and still have so much care and love for the original. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. 100% agree.
And speaking of patriarchy, there's a song in Much Ado About Nothing, which is called Sigh No More Ladies. And it's a really hard thing, because how do you put this into different adaptations and not acknowledge the bizarre meaning of the songs? And a lot of the texts we read were saying that the 1993 version, the Kenneth Branagh version, is not acknowledging the patriarchy in this song. So I'm going to quote from Celestine Delato's article talking about, I love the titles of these articles. This one's called Men in Leather, Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing and Romantic Comedy. Sigh No More Ladies is Balthasar's song, and it's one of, according to Delato, one of the most problematic aspects of the staging. So the song, in case you don't know, I'm not going to sing it, but it's talking about the difference in how men and women love. So very gender essentialist. I'm going to quote here, "Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever, 1 foot in sea and 1 on shore. To one thing constant, never. Then sigh not so, but let them go. And be you blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe into hey, nonny, nonny." So it kind of reminded me of the German song Männer sind Schweine by the Ärzte, in case you remember that. And Männer sind Schweine is very much like, listen, every man just wants to get you in bed and will never care about you long term, but that's just what men are like. And I feel like this is so gender essentialist, and also by nature of that excusing all the sexism. This is just what men are like.
Yeah, boys will be boys.
Yeah, truly. And also saying to women, the sigh no more is like, don't cry about it, that's just what it is.
Yeah, get over it. Do a dance. Yeah, you're not attractive when you're sad. Go and do a dance.
So Kenneth Branagh is using the song 3 times. So it's sung at the beginning by Beatrice, it's written on screen, it's sung in the middle, and it's also at the wedding. In the middle, when it's sung, it's by Patrick Doyle, which I find wild. So Patrick Doyle, if you, like me, love movie scores, is a famous movie score composer, and he's the guy actually singing it. So in the J. Hoberman text, this Kenneth Branagh decision is framed as, quote, "blandly ignoring the play's disturbing undercurrents, the sexual paranoia and the patriarchal cruelty of the social order," when adapting this text for a 1993 audience. Yeah. So why does this matter? Well, like, why are we talking about the song specifically? So the text that I read from was really interesting to me because it's referenced something that I did not notice. So we were talking about the 2005 one and the 2023 one were completely new adaptations. They can do with the text whatever they want, right? The 1993 one is supposed to be the original text, but when Kenneth Branagh adapts it for screen, what does that mean? In terms of, we talked about costuming, we talked about settings, we talked about where is it filmed, for example. And in the play, Benedict's actually being described as a ladies' man quite a lot, which again, the 2005 one did quite a lot with, including him perfuming his own crotch. But Kenneth Branagh and other adaptations, they cut the line about him being a, quote, Cupid's challenger. And in the play, there's at least eight references to Benedict being a Casanova. And Branagh cut 6 of them. This is quite often repeated in the play, that this guy is a fuckboy. And I think it's really funny. In the play, it's even like Shakespeare references that Benedict is familiar with brothels. Quote, "Hang me up at the door of a brothel house for the sign of blind Cupid." So, yeah. And he is being called a fuckboy in Anyone But You, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So that's technically more authentic to the text.
Yes. One more point in favour of Anyone But You.
Right. But
just one.
Yeah, but you pointed this out at the time, I think, that she's basing this on anything that she actually knows about Benedict. She's basing this on her own experience with him.
Yes. Yeah.
So that then ruins it a little bit.
Yeah.
Branagh also drops references that describe Benedict as being unreliable. And different adaptations we've watched, they all clean up Benedict's act, even if they try to stick to the original text.
I think that's so interesting, because I feel like maybe it's just like we just find him super annoying. It's like he has to be at least slightly sympathetic to an audience. I mean, I don't know, because the 2005 version, like you said, he is kind of the worst. He's not portrayed in a particularly flattering way until he has his change of heart. But I guess maybe it's just that we just find him too obnoxious to root for if they didn't do this. But yeah, it's interesting that pretty much every single version has just made him seem less of a terrible person or less annoying.
Yeah, but again, like you said, the 2005 version does this really accurately and authentically, and it still works. I don't love him by the end, but I like him, and I like them as a couple specifically by the end. So the 1993 one, again, Kenneth Branagh one, they cut 8 cuckold jokes. Which is quite a whole lot. Yeah. Like, that's a lot to cut in terms of how other characters describe a character.
Yeah. I guess maybe because people don't necessarily know what cuckoldry is, but it still feels... I know, I was like, oh, maybe it's just because it won't translate that well, people won't know what a cuckold is. But then cutting the 8 references to Benedict as a Casanova alongside cutting the line about him being a Cupid's challenger and everything else that Branagh cuts. I mean, there is a very clear theme in what he's deciding to keep and what he's deciding to discard.
Isn't that an entire porn genre?
An entire what genre?
Cuckolding.
Yeah, an entire what genre?
Porn genre. So people would know what that is?
I was not aware of this. This is news to me. I learned about this word in my A-level drama class, so that's my reference for it.
Yes, I get it. You're more posh than me. But the question does remain, though, why keep the song if showing the hypocrisy of male heterosexuality is too much? And why have the song in 3 times, but never show how ridiculous it is for Benedict to be expected to cheat? Which is what the song tells you. But Hero being accused almost ruins her entire life.
Yes.
And almost all reviews that I've read and all the articles said that the 1993 one, Brenna wants to tell the story more from Beatrice's point of view. But again, why does that mean taking out all the references to him being an asshole? Well, just having his fun, I guess. Yeah. When I first read that the cuckolding jokes were in there, I was like, oh, that makes the rest of it make so much more sense. Because again, you talked about adapting patriarchy from an old play into the modern world. And Joseph Weston is quoted in one of the texts saying, Messina is, quote, a troubling world in which everyone readily suspects everyone else, end quote. And I thought, yeah, of course infidelity is going to be a big part of it. But up until that point, when I read the article, I just assumed that this was just something people used to care about a lot because the idea of a woman's honor was much more of a thing.
And also who inherits your wealth, your family line. And if your child isn't the child of you, but the child of another man, then that's a big deal in this society where being an illegitimate son is also a really big deal in this play. So I guess, yeah.
For example, Don Jon, the bastard.
Don Jon, exactly, the bastard.
Yeah, so the question is, do directors use this song because they want to end the play with a song and dance because it's just fun? The most current adaptation is the Tom Hiddleston one. They end also with song and dance and confetti. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is convention in Shakespeare comedies and comedies of that era, is that there'll be a wedding and a dance at the end. Uplift everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, the song was also put at the end. At the 1990 Royal Shakespeare Company production, they also put the song at the end as well, which again is a choice. And I thought, again, we watched a theater version of this, and Shakespeare in the Park manages, we felt, like both respect the material as an original and also show immense joy by putting other songs in.
Yeah.
And this is not a loose adaptation. If you watch it, it is Shakespeare dialogue, Shakespeare vocabulary. But they still have so much joy in this play. You don't necessarily need the sexist songs.
In fact, I don't think they use the song at all, do they? Because I think they sing... I don't think they sing the exact song, but I think it is based on the original song. But I can't remember what the lyrics are and I can't remember what they say, whether it says the same thing or not, but in different words.
Yeah. It's also wild to watch all these... Sorry if I said this in part 1 already, but just watch all these amazing actors on stage, and then all of a sudden they just belt out a song, and you're like, awesome, you have a perfect pitch. Why not? And you could ask, is this play about how heterosexuality fails men? Delito says, quote, Brenna's film makes the most of the ambiguities and gaps already present in Shakespeare's play and advances a very different proposition. Male bonding is, in the film's ideological discourse, the main obstacle to heterosexual relationships, end quote. This play starts with them coming back from war. You've got the fists in the air if you use the Brenna adaptation. Brotherhood of men just coming back from war, and then they meet, and then they mingle.
Yeah.
And there's so much paranoia around being cheated on in this. And also not being known as a cuckold. But heteronormative masculinity in this play also fails men when they want to do bad things. The only reason Hero is being discovered as not actually having cheated is because they brag about having framed Hero. It's what leads to the downfall of this whole thing. Yeah, and it's the thing that you just mentioned. In Elizabethan England, you had a primogenitor, so the firstborn son, or as is known, its succession.
I'm the eldest boy! I am the eldest boy!
This isn't just important in terms of your male ego, but also, are you raising another man's son?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the anxiety is about that as well. It's literally about who's inheriting everything.
Material concerns. Cool. So now moving on to a different segment.
What if you don't have an adaptation that cares about sticking to the original script? What possibilities does that open up when you do a modern adaptation?
Yeah, and like with looking at casting and what could you do with this and what has been done in the adaptations that we've been looking at. So in this segment, we're going to look a bit at how to adapt Beatrice and Benedict as the unconventional quote-unquote couple versus Hero and Claudio as the traditional couple. So just to start off, this is a really old play, and Shakespeare was a white English dude writing in the early modern era. So Shakespeare's work does contain some pretty gross elements, such as anti-Semitism, anti-black racism, sexism, etc. And Much Ado is no different. Lady Knight the Brave, in her video Love and Mend, Much Ado About Nothing, goes into a lot of detail on anti-Semitism in Shakespeare and how that pervades into Much Ado About Nothing. So there's a particular line in the play that's very anti-Semitic, and Lady Knight the Brave looks at how adaptations choose to treat that line. Usually the line is changed to fool or cut entirely, and she uses this as a jumping off point to discuss anti-Semitism in Shakespeare and ways of adapting productions like Merchant of Venice. I'd really recommend going and checking out that video.
Yeah.
It's really good. And it also looks at like a billion different Much Ado adaptations. We're looking at 4 today and it's taking us ages, but she's looking at, pretty much I think every Much Ado adaptation that you can find online. It's really good. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Just in terms of anti-Semitism in Shakespeare and how that's being, again, we talk a lot about adaptation and readaptation. Also how that affects different communities and how they choose to adapt different Shakespeare plays.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's also an amazing video. Highly recommend.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So what we're going to focus on is how adaptations might go about their casting choices for Beatrice and Hero. There's this dichotomy of the shrew versus the goddess. So Beatrice fits into the shrew category, and these are archetypes of women in the early modern era. So Beatrice is older, she's getting towards the end of marriageable age, she's outspoken and loud, whereas Hero is the model of the submissive ideal woman. She's quiet, subdued, of good marriageable age, and she submits to her father. And I think the play is interested in where they sit under patriarchy in these archetypes and how this affects their behaviour. So because of this, Beatrice and by extension Benedict are an unconventional couple. They're older and they're too wise to fall in love. Whereas Hero and Claudio are the more conventional couple. They fall in love at first sight, or potentially not at first sight, but they represent the folly of youth and kind of youthful love. Yeah. They're more of the kind of Romeo and Juliet vibe, basically.
Yeah.
With all that entails. So usually Beatrice being quote-unquote unconventional usually translates to adaptations making her a brunette or a redhead, such as in the 1993 version with Emma Thompson and in 2005 with Sarah Parish, because she's feisty.
Yeah.
But in Anyone But You, it doesn't even bother incorporating it at all, and doesn't really bother with this dichotomy of the shrew and goddess. So B is actually Hero/Hallie's younger sister, which I thought was a really interesting choice. I think it might just be because Sydney Sweeney is younger than the actress they chose to play Hallie, but it still just feels like a slightly weird choice given that it takes away the fact that Beatrice and Benedict are supposed to be the older and more mature couple. Sydney Sweeney's also kind of conventionally attractive, she's white, she's thin, privileged, and she's even blonde as well, and she's supposed to be a hot mess. She's dropped out of law school, she's recently been through a breakup, but I don't know, it just feels a little bit forced, this image of her as a hot mess. We talked about this a bit more in part 1, given how perfect, quote-unquote, she is otherwise. She's not very convincing as a mess of a character, I would argue.
Yeah. Also, again, the 2005 one, we keep talking about this, they didn't have a great budget.
No.
But they still managed to make, because you talked about the feistiness, they even make Sarah Parish's hair really spiky. Which, yes, was there in 2005, but it fits in with her personality and everything. And they made Billie Piper's hair really cutesy, blonde, and like curly to show her naivete. And then it becomes more mature as she grows and matures over the course of this. And by the end, her hair is, it's like iron flat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know how you say that in English.
Yeah, straightened.
Straightened, thank you. And you can also see her also just having much more of a relaxed posture by the end. She's no longer the cute girly at the end.
Yeah.
And Sydney Sweeney's hair does not really change over the course of this movie. It's always perfectly volumized.
Yes. Yeah, nothing about her like costuming kind of shows any sort of arc, I don't think. She's just wearing beautiful and not unassuming, but uninteresting. But just sort of nothing.
Doesn't have personality.
Doesn't have a lot of personality. Like she looks great, but what does it say about anything that she looks great? That's all it says, really. So they don't really make the most of the casting or the costuming in Anyone But You to sort of try and portray anything about Beatrice's character. So a modern adaptation of Much Ado could be a chance to explore more quote-unquote unconventional casting choices. Again, quote-unquote. Yeah, unconventional, massive scare quotes, casting choices. And looking at actresses who aren't usually seen as a romantic lead or aren't usually cast as a romantic lead. So the 2019 version really more leans into the fact that Beatrice and Benedict are supposed to be the less quote-unquote conventional couple. As Danielle Brooks says, so she's the actress who plays Beatrice, she says, quote,
"But for me, being a plus-size black woman, dark-skinned black woman, natural hair, getting to be the lead of a Shakespeare in the Park, which is a huge deal, being the lead of a Shakespeare was like, that never happens. So I was like, I got to jump on this opportunity."
And it works really well with the character, the quote-unquote unconventional character in the eyes of society, again, from white supremacist ideas of beauty standards, who gets to be the main part in a rom-com situation. She gets to play that part, but she also isn't unhappy. She isn't made to be unhappy because of who she is, and she isn't punished for it either. And she is the romantic lead, much more than Hero is. Mm-hmm. She gets the more satisfying, believable and romantic love story, and she gets to have the fun rom-com plot about being tricked into loving Benedict by hiding behind some hedges, rather than being accused of being a slut at the altar. So she gets to be the romantic lead and have, even though she does obviously go through some turmoil when Hero gets accused, she isn't the one with the more traumatic plotline. I can't find a source to back this up, but I remember learning about this, that certain versions of Much Ado About Nothing, when they were written in the early modern equivalent of playbills, the play was called Beatrice and Benedict rather than Much Ado About Nothing, because people were like, yes, I love that couple, and that's the couple that everyone remembers. So yeah, if it's not clear from the plot.
It's also very Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. But they're the characters that you remember because they have the great chemistry, they have the great banter, and as we've talked about, they have the relationship arc that actually means something and is impactful.
Yeah.
And I think it's also interesting that Leon decided to cast younger. So he said he wanted, quote, 4 people trying to discover life in their 20s, end quote. And that's why he cast a slightly younger Beatrice and Benedict. They're like the equivalent age of Hero and Claudio. But I don't think that's a problem. I think that really works because it leans into other aspects of the characters. Unlike Anyone But You, where it just feels like they just didn't care. It's just another example of them not really caring about the source material.
I think it depends on the script and it depends on the actor.
Yes.
Damian Lewis, despite the fact that he's too old to be acting this way, is so funny.
Yeah.
Because of the script and because of the acting. And what's his name? Grantham Coleman? No.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Grantham Coleman. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Grantham Coleman. Like, he is so funny. Obviously, I genuinely just want older people in stuff in general because dating shouldn't just be about people in their 20s. But he's so funny that his youthful nonsense in this play just plays as hilarious that, like you said, like it doesn't, like you don't mind that. Honestly, I didn't even think about the fact that they're younger until you just mentioned it. I didn't think about that too much.
No, same. Neither did I. It didn't make a difference, and yeah.
Yeah. It is ridiculous though because Danielle Brooks is so beautiful.
Yeah, no, she's really beautiful.
Let's be unconventional. Let's cast someone that beautiful, and it's oh my god. Ugh.
Yeah, but I'm really glad that she got to.
Some of us are ugly, Danielle.
Yeah. Actually, I just want ugly actors, please. But like, I mean, genuinely. But also, yeah, I'm really glad she got to play that character because she talked about always in Shakespeare's being cast as like Guard 1 or like Villager or something. So actually being able to show her acting chops is really great.
Imagine never seeing her go, Senor Benedict.
Yeah.
Her line deliveries in this were so amazing.
So good. So yeah, it's a really great casting choices, and it makes like perfect sense in the themes of the play as well, and really, yeah, everything about it is great. And it's also in a way that's positive for the character rather than falling into negative stereotypes. On the other hand, an example of a character being adapted into negative stereotypes, or using quite a lot of negative stereotypes around a character, is in the 2005 version. The only black member of the main cast is Nina Sasanya, who plays Margaret. And I think Nina Sasanya plays the character really well, but the film kind of plays up to tropes of like black women as hypersexualized and villainous. So, for example, it gives us this kind of quite slut-shamey depiction of Margaret, playing up the fact that the original Margaret in Much Ado About Nothing is associated with sex because she's the one that Braccio seduces. So Margaret in the 2005 version goes to the fancy dress party as this, quote, sexy cat thing.
Yeah.
And she flirts with Benedict, and she's also antagonistic towards Beatrice, and she says pretty mean things to her in the gulling scene.
Well, if she's so bloody smart, why doesn't she treat him with a bit of respect? Instead of looking down her nose at him all the time, that stuck-up, frigid old cow. Having said all that, I must emphasise that I really do like her tremendously.
Can anyone smell smoke?
Oh, God.
I think she has really brilliant line delivery. That scene is really, really funny. But again, the film, because she's the only black main character in the cast, it's just oh, you've just used all these tropes and you've used these stereotypes, and then you've not really thought about that, and it's just sort of yeah, it's a bit shit.
Yeah. Also, there's multiple shots of her when she's helping Benedict with his tie, and her tits are just the main focus of the shot, and you just go really?
Yeah.
This is the one black actor who gets lines and stuff in this, and this is what you have her do. Come on.
And the film also treats her in quite a disposable way as well. It doesn't really care what she thinks when Benedict doesn't like her anymore and moves on to Beatrice. She's annoyed for 2 seconds and then she's just kind of glosses over it. She's fine. And this, again, plays into tropes around the disposable black or POC love interest. And obviously you can sometimes explore stereotypes if you know what you're doing with them and do something interesting with them, but that's not what's happening here. They're not giving her any depth or nuance. And again, she's the only main black member of the cast. So, yeah, Margaret is kind of just here, uses the plot device for the 2 white main love interests. And not treated that well by this version of Much Ado About Nothing. I think the 2019 version shows how you can be aware of possibility within text to inform casting choices. Danielle Brooks is amazing as Beatrice, and her casting gives a more expansive sense of what a love interest can be. However, the 2005 version shows what can happen if you're not aware or don't care about reproducing negative stereotypes and not interested in doing anything interesting with them.
Again, looking at all these adaptations and all these different choices that were made, that the original text is kind of neoliberal. Because Shakespeare loves to point out these double standards for women, for example, but he doesn't have a solution. Pointing out that capitalism is bad, but doesn't have anything beyond that is kind of what we're currently doing with that kind of thing. That's very prevalent in a lot of movies, and I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, what does that mean, though?
But then doesn't Shakespeare say, perhaps, that solidarity that breaks through patriarchy could be a way to improve life for women? Potentially? ? E.g. Benedict also listening to Beatrice.
But that also demands matronormativity. I don't want a man to have to fall in love with me to care about my basic human rights.
Yeah. And I feel also that's an element of the text, but you can choose to highlight that as the 2005 version does, or you can gloss over it a little bit. It's an idea that's there, but it's not necessarily something the play's pushing.
There's a quote here that, again, I do not remember who said this because for some reason I didn't write it down. I'm going to put that in they're going to be all in our notes. But a quote, once again, Shakespeare seems to promote the idea that women are more constant than men and more stoical in their suffering. The comedy seems to inspire pity for them because of this, end quote. And I would argue, again, this is very gender essentialist. I don't know, I don't want to watch a woman suffer.
Yeah, and I think that's an opportunity to rethink the ideas within the text and then maybe subvert them or adapt them. That's something that adaptations can do, is look at that and be like, is this something we want to promote, or is this something we want to explore? Is this something we want to challenge in the way that we adapt this? But it's definitely something to be aware of when you adapt this play, that there are all these ideas embedded within it from this early modern particular perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we talked in the first episode very much about sort of the money involved and what does it mean to adapt Shakespeare? Why do we keep adapting white people's work? And also where the movie industry stands as of this point. And it's so funny because I was randomly just looking through my letterbox and David Ehrlich wrote a review of The Threesome, which is a movie I've not seen. But talking about rom-coms and do we still make rom-coms, he said, quote, everybody wants rom-coms to have a renaissance, but nobody seems to know how they should evolve to reflect the realities of the modern world. Few of the recent efforts to resurrect the form have been meaningfully successful, and most of these rare successes have used hot new stars to hide their reliance on dusty old tropes. no shade to the breezy appeal of Anyone But You, but no one would accuse that Shakespeare-inspired charmer of trying to move the genre forward.
True.
And he then also talks about how they have a problem with doing meet cutes and stuff in a modern setting with cell phones, and I don't think that's the issue. I just feel like they don't really ever go for the comedy in a way that makes sense, and they go with, this is the star that everybody wants to see. That will do enough to get people to watch a movie. And listen, Anyone But You was very successful, like, financially. But dear Lord, is that a great rom-com? No. It's fine, but it's not great. And most recently, there's been a Russo brothers movie that cost $320 million, which I've not seen it, but everyone says is trash. And it's a thing of like Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. And I'm like,
Chris Pratt, who wasn't, they invented a character for him to play. It's just the Chris Pratt character. He didn't exist in the source material. Based on a book that my friend really likes, who was a little bit annoyed that they changed it in that way to include Chris Pratt. I
don't know what the point of that is. Why are you spending $320 million on one movie for streaming service? I've not heard of this film until people started like writing about how bad it is. And I don't know what the point of this is.
I think like hate watching like is a thing and does make films money if people are watching it and talking about it. But do you deliberately want to spend $320 million on a film that people hate? And that's the only reason people watch it?
I'm going to take a wild guess and say that that's not what happened here.
I don't think so.
I don't think you spent $320 million on a thing that people are going to loathe. You could have just given that money to 10 filmmakers. It could have been a lot cheaper to make a lot more films. And if you have to make something dusty and old, just put your own spin on it and make it interesting. Don't just throw someone famous and hot in there and then just tell me, this is what you want to see, right? I find it really, really depressing that nowadays they can waste that much money on a movie people don't really like instead of letting more people make something. I guarantee you that theater production did not cost that much. I guarantee you that that episode for the BBC in 2005 didn't cost.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah, and I really wish people did more interesting things with it. Yeah. But if you want to check out any Shakespeare adaptations that we are discussing today, I just wanted to end this on a fun note of who's your favorite, and I'm going to ask you, who's your favorite hero?
So definitely, I think a tie between the 2019 hero and the 2005 hero. I think the 2019 version, for using the original play script, they give her as much as they possibly can, and you get a lot from her character. You feel a lot from her character. And I think with the 2005, I love how she starts off as this ditzy character that you think is just doesn't know any, like she's just the Nepo hire and she doesn't really know anything. And then by the end, you're like, oh no, you have a lot of depth actually, and maybe this is just how Claude sees you. And here's everything that you have to offer. I think I like 2019, 2005. What about you?
Yeah, Billie Piper for the win. I think the 2019 one as well for the lunge.
The lunge.
For her lunging at Claudio, because that man needed to be beaten up by someone, and no one did it.
They held her back. Why? Anyway.
Yeah. What's your favorite meet cute in any of these?
Ooh, okay, so we've got...
You can do Hero and Claudio, or you can do Beatrice and Benedict, I don't care.
Have you got... I'm trying to think. Have you got one?
My favorite is Anyone But You. I think that's generally really, really cute and adorable. He was just generally offering help in a situation where someone needed to use the bathroom. I think that's really cute. Also, again, a modern adaptation problem to put into a meet cute. I thought that was adorable. Just the fact that there was no negging, the fact that he was being generally really sweet, and that they used the bread later to make a grilled cheese that worked on every level. The toilet paper on her shoe, all of that is very meet cute, and I think it works.
Yes, that was nice. I'm trying to remember, was the Senior Benedict, was that in the 2019 version, was that when they would just probably that. It's been a little while since I watched that version, but I think so. Their first meeting in that was very good.
I wonder that you will still be talking, Senor Benedict. Nobody marks you.
Yeah. The delivery and the chemistry between those two is really good.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to Shakespeare for the line, "Are you yet living?"
Yeah.
Because what a way to open a conversation. Like, to be like, you haven't died yet, Beatrice. Like, what a way to greet someone. In the 1400s too. Wait, am I wrong again?
1500s. 14th century. No, 16th century. Wait, shit. Yeah, 1500s.
Oh my god. Yeah. I just love that. Do you have a favorite Beatrice or a favorite Benedict?
Oh, I think any of them that aren't Anyone But You are my favourites. I think they all have they all have really good characteristics. I love Grantham Coleman's Benedict. And I love his gulling scene where he's hiding, he's being tricked, he's hiding, and then to jump across to I can't remember the house, he throws a stone to get them to look away and then runs across. He's so goofy, he's so silly. I think he's really funny, he's great. But I also liked the Damian Lewis Benedict, and just he's just the worst but also the best. and the trimming of the facial hair as his makeover moment, I thought that was really, really well done and very funny.
Yeah.
And cute.
Same for me. I think every Beatrice works except for, but that's not Sydney Sweeney's fault. It's the writing and the costuming and
everything
and the styling. Yes. Yeah. Also, the Benedict in Anyone But You also for me just doesn't. I don't know. He has moments, but overall, this is not a dude that I find interesting to care about. Yeah. What's your favorite adaptation or use of Don?
The Bastard. I really like the Keanu Reeves Don Jon. I just think he's really iconic.
He's the gayest one.
He's the gayest one. He's the most emo and moody one. He's just strutting around in his leather trousers, getting a massage. I don't know. Yeah, I think he's great. I think he's one of the best. He's one of the best. I think he's one of the ones I remember as well. I feel like Don Jon, especially with the modern ones, because they often don't use him in quite the same way. He's just, I don't know. He's a memorable one for me, I think.
I think my favorite might be the 2005 one because I think that a lot of the adaptations that stick to the original script as much as possible, they don't work for me because Don Jon just disappears at some point and then you never see him again. But he's harmed Hero the most. And that's why I think the 2005 one works so well, because you never have that moment again, usually with Hero and Dawn in the same room and her calling him out specifically. So in that adaptation 2005, you get that moment and then he disappears and then you never see him again. And then it's fine.
Agree.
You mentioned the gulling scene. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Dogberry adaptation in both the 2019 one, because that was a really funny performance, and also the 2005 one, because they're so funny.
Yeah.
And well adapted. At one point, the older one goes like, could you please use a coaster, to Leonard? And Leonard goes like, this is my house.
This is my house. And I'm rooting for them when they figure out the Don Hero plot. Yeah, they've done it. And ironically, it's the kind of, I guess they're not actually police, they're security guards, but they're actually very helpful.
Yeah.
Ironically. But and of course the Dogberry in Anyone But You, who is a cake box.
Oh, you're right.
I got a shout out last time as well, but shout out to them.
You know what? Anyone But You has a cute dog. None of the other ones have cute dogs.
Yeah.
To say something positive. So if you wanted to, what would you recommend? If you want to watch a reproduction of the original text, you should watch
2019 version.
Shakespeare in the Park.
And 1993 as well. Watch that one. But if you want to watch the proper stage production, watch 2019.
And if you want to watch a modern adaptation, watch
2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's on the Internet Archive. We're going to put the link in the description. You're going to have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. The production quality is low, but the everything else quality...
Excellent.
Gotta love it. Okay, so at the end of every episode, we like to kind of close out with some recommendations for media that we've been enjoying recently and that we think more people should check out. Anna, what is your recommendation for this episode?
I'm a fan of the podcast Bad Gays, and I wanted to specifically shout out the episode on Marianne Woods and Jane Perrier. There's a movie with Shirley MacLaine and Audrey Hepburn called The Children's Hour, which is based on the play. And it's very, very famous. It's very tragic. But this play and this movie is sort of based on the people's name I just mentioned and sort of accusations of lesbianism in a school environment and what does that do to the people involved. And it's also very much about the real history behind it is about class. And I really recommend that history because it was massively fascinating to me personally. But just in general, like, what does all that have to do with like imperial forces as well? And yeah, I highly recommend that episode. It's really, really fascinating to listen to.
Nice.
What is your recommendation?
So my recommendation, since we are talking a lot about rom-coms, I wanted to recommend a really good rom-com which we watched together, which is Rye Lane, which is a 2022 movie. It's just a really great rom-com, and it does the tropes really well. It's directed by Rain Allen Miller and written by Nathan Bryan and Tom Mellier, and starring David Johnson and Vivian Opara. And it's just really great. And if you want to watch something really funny and playful, really interestingly shot and really beautiful, with great characters, great writing, and that's really funny, I highly recommend Rye Lane. It's a great rom-com. Just watch it. Just watch it. Just watch it.
It's so fun. When we finally watched it, I was like, why didn't I watch this before?
Yeah. It's so good. It's just it's heartwarming, and also these two 20-somethings who've both been through separate breakups, and then they meet at this art exhibition, and David Johnson's character is like crying in a toilet, and it's quite sad but also quite funny. And then they have this emotional journey across South London, and they build a relationship along the way, and it's just great. It's just so good.
You might say it's funny from top to bottom. That will be funnier when you've watched the film.
Yeah.
You always end with a jade's trick. I know you of old.
Okay, do you have a joke for us, Lily?
Okay, so this joke is in honour of the fact that you're recording on the 16th of March. So the 15th of the 3rd is the Ides of March. Do you know at what time it officially starts?
No, I don't. When does it start?
At 2.
Nice.